Alex had taught dance to nervous students for years, but he had never seen anyone look at a dance floor with as much desperate longing as the silver-skinned woman in the simple dress. So he did what he always did and asked her to learn. "Hi there," Alex said, approaching. "First time?" The woman's violet eyes widened slightly, flicking up from where they had been glued to the dancing couples on the floor. She looked at him as if she hadn't expected anyone to notice her at all, let alone speak directly to her. Her lips parted with surprise. I have not danced in a very long time," she said hesitantly, the words foreign and uncertain in her mouth, like they were from an ancient language that had been forgotten for centuries. Alex's smile never faltered. "Then we should fix that." He extended his hand to her again, more gently this time than when he'd first approached. This woman seemed different from any other student. There was a quiet grace about her despite the tension in every line of her posture. She hesitated for just an instant longer before reaching out and laying a slender silver hand against his own. "Thank you," she murmured, not quite meeting his gaze, as he pulled her toward him with surprising gentleness considering how tall and lithe she was compared to himself. Her skin felt cool under the fabric of her simple dress. "Let's start slow, shall we?" Alex suggested, guiding them both into a relaxed stance on one side of the dance floor where they wouldn't be in anyone else's way yet. He placed his hand lightly at the small of her back, and she allowed him to take hold of hers with equal delicacy. "So, what brought you here tonight? It's not every day we see someone from another world dancing in our midst," Alex said conversationally, hoping to draw her out a bit more about herself. He was used to being approachable. It helped that he didn't get starstruck easily, even with some of the most famous faces on earth. She glanced away from him briefly and looked down at their feet, where they stood side by side in an open pose, ready for movement, but not yet moving. When she looked back up, her eyes were bright, not just from light reflecting off them like a moonstone, but from something more within, perhaps curiosity or excitement. "My people rarely dance," Queen Lysara of Orthanese admitted softly, after taking another look around the room as if searching to ensure no one else was paying attention. "I thought I wanted to experience this aspect of human culture first, and without being recognized for who I am." "Who are you then?" Alex asked, genuinely curious, though he had a sneaking suspicion that this woman was more than just an ordinary visitor from another world given how uncommon her appearance was. She sighed softly and hesitated before saying quietly, "I rule over many star systems in my home galaxy." She paused for emphasis. "My name is Queen Lysara of Orthanese." Alex blinked, not letting the shock show on his face too much because he had a feeling that revealing such information wasn't exactly something she did every day either, and it could be nerve-wracking for her. "Well, Your Majesty," Alex said with genuine warmth in his voice, "you're safe here. You can just be yourself tonight." She tilted her head slightly at the familiar human address of respect, but smiled faintly nonetheless. It was such a rare thing to feel that she might actually blend into society instead of commanding it. "Alex," he nodded and focused back on what they were there for. "Let's start with this basic step," he instructed, his tone professional yet patient, as always when teaching beginners. He showed her how to move her feet first while holding position, then let go so she could practice by herself before guiding them both through a few more steps until Lysara started getting the hang of it. By now they had gathered a small crowd around them consisting mostly of curious onlookers, and perhaps one or two hopeful admirers hoping for an audience with royalty. Every time Alex looked up, someone new was there pressing in closer, though he paid little mind to that as long as everyone kept their distance from his student. "See, you've got the rhythm," Alex praised once she could follow along fluidly without stumbling on basic patterns and sequences of movement between partners. I did not expect this would be so natural for me after such a long time, Lysara murmured, looking genuinely surprised at her own ease with what should have been an alien skill if ever there was one. She glanced around again cautiously, but found no signs of anyone approaching them to interrupt. Everyone gets like that once they realize how much fun it is, Alex assured her as he slipped back into his teaching mode, guiding through more complex moves. He could see the corners of her mouth turning up slightly whenever she got something right, and managed a small laugh when she almost tripped over an unexpected twirl, but recovered beautifully. As they danced, Lysara found herself relaxing further with each passing moment, despite knowing perfectly well who she was in reality. Outside this bubble of anonymity, it felt liberating to be simply Queen Lysara, instead of the omnipotent ruler everyone knew by name and feared for her decisions, even when they had never met face to face. "Is there anything you're worried about?" Alex asked gently, halting them both mid-step so she would have time to respond before continuing. There was something in his tone that made Lysara feel oddly Sophia, rare sensation after centuries of being a symbol rather than a person. She hesitated again, but then looked at him with honest eyes reflecting the uncertainty and vulnerability underneath her customary poise. "I suppose I am worried about returning home and having to go back into whatever role everyone expects me to play," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper even though they stood alone on one side of what was now a crowded floor. Alex squeezed his partner's hand reassuringly. "You should dance for yourself first before worrying too much about anyone else's expectations," he said kindly but firmly, squeezing her shoulders gently, as if trying to physically reinforce the point. Lysara returned his look with gratitude and something that could almost be described as affection. The thought made Alex blink again in surprise, because it wasn't every day a queen thanked him for making her feel normal and beautiful, at least momentarily. "And you should dance like this more often too," she replied unexpectedly, stepping closer so their foreheads touched lightly. "It has been far too long since I last felt free." Their eyes met once more and held there as the world around them faded away, just two people in a room, sharing a moment of mutual understanding between worlds and roles forgotten. "Let's keep going then," Alex said softly, smiling warmly at her before pulling Lysara into another step. She followed without hesitation, matching his rhythm perfectly, as if they had been partners for lifetimes rather than hours or moments, since meeting each other entirely by chance among countless species gathered here tonight to share their cultures. As the night wore on and people continued pouring in from all corners of known space along with Earth itself, Lysara found herself dancing not just with Alex, but with others too, as introductions were made and connections formed across boundaries she had never thought possible before this unique evening. Each new partner reminded her why dance could be such a powerful tool for bringing disparate beings together. By the time their little corner of interstellar cultural exchange was winding down late into night, Lysara felt almost sad to leave behind the sense of community and freedom that dancing had given her, despite everything else waiting back home under titles she would inevitably resume once more. Yet even as Alex bid farewell to his students, including the one who had captured everyone's attention from first glance onward, due not only to appearance, but grace with movement, there was a lingering hope in both their minds about what might happen next beyond tonight's celebration. For now, though, All that mattered was this moment where they were able simply be human and alien alike and feel alive together through shared joy of motion. The lights of the interspecies cultural exchange event flickered gently, creating an almost ethereal glow that bathed Alex and Lysara in a warm embrace as they resumed their dance lesson after a brief moment of shared understanding. The music played on softly, a blend of Earth's salsa rhythms with alien melodies Alex had never heard before, but was quick to learn alongside his students. "All right," said Alex, nodding towards her confidently despite the initial stiffness she displayed earlier. "Let's start again from the beginning. Just remember what we talked about. Dancing is all about letting go and enjoying yourself." Lysara glanced up at him with those violet eyes that seemed to hold a universe of secrets within them. She nodded slowly, taking a deep breath as if trying to steel herself for yet another new experience. "Begin," she whispered more to herself than Alex. He grinned warmly in response before guiding her through the first steps once again. The dance floor was alive with activity now, aliens and humans alike spinning around each other under the watchful eye of teachers like Alex, who were there solely to make sure everyone could enjoy themselves without fear or hesitation, regardless if they had 4 legs, 3 arms, bioluminescence capably. Abilities goal remained simple: teach them how to move gracefully together. Lysara's movements started out awkwardly rigid. Centuries of strict royal etiquette had left her body unaccustomed to the loose and fluid motions required for dancing. Her silver skin caught the light in an almost hypnotic pattern as she moved, drawing curious looks from other attendees who couldn't quite believe their eyes when they saw someone resembling Queen Lysara Vorthanes enjoying herself so openly. Alex's patience shone through as he gently corrected her stance and footwork without ever losing his encouraging smile. "Let your hips do the work," he said softly, placing a hand on her back to guide her into another step sequence smoothly. She hesitated briefly, but then let go of some invisible constraint inside herself, allowing Alex's gentle pressure to ease her body forward. "Do you always speak to all your students this way?" Lysara asked suddenly, as they paused for breath mid-dance, laughter bubbling up from within her like a long-suppressed joy finally breaking free. Alex chuckled warmly. "Not exactly," he admitted with genuine warmth, and his gaze now focused solely on her rather than the bustling event around them. "But I think every once in a while someone needs to hear it. Sometimes we all just need that little push." Lysara looked down at him for a moment, feeling something unfamiliar stirring inside, gratitude mixed deeply with affection as she realized how rare this kind of treatment was indeed for her among the countless species who bowed before her throne back home. No one had ever spoken to Queen Lysara Vorthanes quite like Alex did, simply because no other being could dare treat a ruling monarch so casually or respectfully. At once, she returned his look with earnestness she hadn't known was possible anymore until now, when faced with someone who saw her not as an emblem of power, but simply another individual eager to learn and grow. "No one has ever spoken to me without deference in 200 years, Lysara confessed softly, the weight of those words heavy upon both their shoulders, even though they hadn't fully realized it until this moment shared between them. Alex squeezed her shoulder gently, as if offering silent comfort while also reinforcing his earlier advice about dancing for oneself first before worrying too much about external expectations. "Then tonight is your night to break that mold," he said softly, but with conviction in both tone and gaze held steady upon hers, despite any fears or uncertainties lingering within him. Lysara stepped closer so their foreheads touched lightly again, a gesture of mutual respect and understanding between them as they paused once more amidst all the swirling colors and lights. "You should dance like this more often too," she replied unexpectedly, but with sincerity that left Alex blinking in surprise at how deeply her words resonated within him. Each step now felt easier somehow, perhaps because Lysara no longer fought against herself or tried to maintain those centuries-old rigid postures which had so defined who she was once. Instead, there was a newfound fluidity and freedom guiding every movement made by both teacher and student alike as they seamlessly slipped into one another's rhythm without missing a beat. As the night progressed further still, Lysara found herself dancing not just with Alex, but also embracing opportunities to partner with others who had gathered here tonight, eager for cultural exchange beyond their usual boundaries. Each new connection formed across species seemed nothing short of magical under such unique circumstances, proof that while differences might seem insurmountable at times, they could often lead towards greater understanding through shared experiences rather than walls built from fear or ignorance. By the time Alex noticed how late it had become and began preparing to close down his corner of interspecies celebration for the evening ahead, there was a strange sense of sadness lingering within him, knowing their time spent learning together would soon be at an end. Yet even amidst these final moments before farewell approaches arrived, he couldn't help but hope that perhaps something different might yet arise out of tonight's dance after all. "All right," Alex said softly, as they came to another natural stopping point among the lessons taught earlier, shared late into nightfall under interspecies cultural exchange events' warm glow. "Let me know if you need anything more today." Lysara looked up at him again with that strange mixture of gratitude and affection lingering still within her gaze, while reaching out one hand for Alex's in a gesture both familiar yet completely new between them. "Thank you," she murmured honestly, squeezing his fingers tightly before letting go reluctantly. "For everything tonight." His smile stayed warm despite the hint of melancholy now creeping around edges as he watched Lysara turn away slowly towards where others waited eagerly to dance next, while Alex himself began tidying up equipment and gathering notes necessary for tomorrow's classes back home at community college. Yet even amidst these final preparations nearing completion, a part of him couldn't help but hope silently that perhaps someday they might share another lesson or two, this time without masks hiding behind them any more. The air buzzed with a unique blend of excitement and anticipation as Alex and Lysara continued their dance lessons well into the night. The music shifted seamlessly, each beat carrying them through intricate patterns that blended perfectly despite coming from entirely different cultural backgrounds. As they danced together, Alex noticed something peculiar about his usually stoic partner. Her movements were starting to lose some of the stiffness associated with formal royal conduct. Instead, there was an elegance mixed with a newfound fluidity and joy. "Let's try another spin," suggested Alex, his voice full of encouragement as he guided Lysara into yet another turn on the dance floor. She followed effortlessly this time, her face breaking out in genuine laughter mid-twirl when she caught herself off balance, but quickly corrected it. Lysara's eyes shone with an ethereal light that matched the vibrant colors of the interspecies cultural exchange event as they continued their intricate steps and dips. Each movement seemed to flow naturally from one into another, a testament not just to Alex's teaching skills, but also to Lysara's willingness to let go of her royal restraint. As the night wore on, the music slowed dramatically, drawing them into a slower pace that demanded more intimate contact bodies aligning closer with each step taken. It was during this moment when Lysara appeared momentarily lost in thought, and began to look slightly melancholy despite being surrounded by joyous celebration around her. "Everything okay?" Alex asked gently after the silence became noticeable between them, their dance pausing only briefly as he spoke into her ear while still maintaining contact with his hands on her waist. She hesitated for a moment before responding quietly, "I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed anything this much." Alex squeezed her hand reassuringly without needing words to communicate how deeply he felt what she was expressing. He could sense there were layers upon layers of history and pressure weighing heavily against Lysara that made moments like these rare, but incredibly precious. "Then keep dancing," Alex said softly, his eyes reflecting the sincerity behind those three simple yet powerful words, as if they held a promise to continue unwrapping her from centuries' worth of royal formalities she wore like armor. "Every night I'm here." Her gaze met his with an unexpected warmth that made him feel seen in ways he hadn't expected after just one evening together. The connection forming between them went beyond mere physical chemistry or even the joy they found in dancing. It was something deeper, a mutual understanding born out of shared moments where boundaries were challenged and broken down. Lysara nodded slowly, her eyes locking onto Alex's with an intensity that made him pause momentarily before continuing to guide their dance once more. There was no need for further words exchanged between them as they fell back into step together, moving gracefully across the floor amidst other dancing pairs around them who were lost in their own worlds of joy and cultural exchange. The night continued much like this, filled with laughter and shared moments of discovery beyond just steps taught within salsa routines. Alex noticed how Lysara's presence seemed to draw people towards her despite being largely unknown here, an intriguing contrast given the royal stature she carried back home, but kept hidden through glamour and anonymity tonight. As others approached to dance or simply strike up conversations, there was always something special about witnessing those interactions from afar, seeing friends made across species barriers due partly thanks to lessons learned under Alex's guidance. It wasn't until much later, when Alex realized how late it had become, that the sense of impending farewell began settling in uncomfortably. He started preparing to close down his corner, where they held classes earlier, gathering up equipment and papers needed for tomorrow's class at the community college while watching Lysara move gracefully around, engaging with different individuals. "All right," he said softly, as she approached one final time under dimmed lights now casting shadows across their faces subtly, but not enough to lose eye contact. "Let me know if you need anything more today." Lysara looked up at him again, gratitude and a hint of lingering sadness playing out visibly within her eyes, before reaching towards his hand once more in that familiar gesture of acknowledgement between them. "Thank you," she murmured honestly, squeezing tightly before releasing reluctantly to head off toward where others still waited eagerly for their turn on the dance floor. Her departure left behind an echo of warmth and shared experience, even as Alex began tidying up, a part of him secretly hoping these lessons might extend beyond tonight's event. As he packed away equipment, Lysara reappeared briefly near his station, but didn't say much more than an other thank you before stepping back into the crowd again. Yet amidst final preparations nearing completion for closing down early hours of morning shift at exchange event venue, Alex couldn't help feeling a sense of longing, wondering silently whether perhaps someday soon they might share yet another lesson or two without masks hiding true selves anymore. And the night was humming with the joyful rhythm of interspecies celebration, when Grand Vizier Mithros burst into the room, his presence casting a shadow over the festivities, like thunder rolling in before lightning strikes. Guards flanked him, their uniforms, sharp and serious, against the colorful backdrop of dancers and revelers. "My queen," he boomed, his voice cutting through the music, as if it were made of air that could be parted by sound alone. "This is undignified." The room fell silent almost instantly, eyes darting toward where Alex and Lysara had been dancing a moment ago. A hush settled over everyone as they watched in stunned silence. Lysara's expression remained serene for only an instant before her facade cracked ever so slightly. Her violet eyes widened momentarily with surprise, but she quickly regained composure as her disguise shimmered out of existence, revealing the intricate royal markings that adorned her luminous silver skin, a testament to her status and power within her species. Alex's jaw dropped open in shock as he stared at Lysara, now fully revealed. He had no idea who or what this woman was when she approached him earlier. His initial reaction was sheer disbelief, followed by an overwhelming mix of awe and worry. His mind raced. How could such a moment happen? "My queen," Alex said softly, bowing deeply, even though he felt like the floor might swallow him whole in that instant. With her royal identity now exposed to all present, Lysara turned back towards Mithros with a calm yet firm demeanor, despite knowing what awaited her. "Grand Vizier," she replied gracefully, taking on an air of authority once more. But there was something different about the way she carried herself, more relaxed and almost joyful. The music stopped abruptly in response to this intrusion into their celebration, leaving only murmurs and gasps from those present who had no idea how grand a secret they were privy to now. "Your Majesty," Mithros repeated insistently, clearly displeased. "This is unacceptable. We should return immediately." Lysara's violet eyes met Alex again briefly before shifting back to the vizier standing implacably beside her. "I am not ready," she stated firmly, "and I will decide when it is time." The sheer audacity of this response seemed to take Mithros aback for a moment, but only momentarily, as he gathered himself and addressed Lysara with renewed fervor. "Your Highness, your safety must come first," the vizier argued forcefully. Being exposed in such an undignified manner, it could be dangerous. Alex couldn't help stepping forward then, his voice low but clear above the growing hush of those around him. "With all due respect," he said quietly yet firmly to Lysara's guard and advisor. She was happy. Mithros turned sharply towards Alex now, eyes narrowing in a way that suggested this human had just overstepped enormously despite his sincere tone. "Human," Mithros intoned icily before focusing once more on Lysara, who hadn't yet moved from her place beside him, but remained poised and unflinching. "This is not the behavior expected of one as revered and powerful as yourself." Lysara's gaze flickered briefly towards Alex again, gratitude and a quiet resolve shining through despite everything hanging in balance before them. Then she met Mithros' stern eyes once more. "Perhaps it's time my people learned to value joy," Lysara declared softly yet decisively. "For centuries we have focused solely on duty and order. Now is the moment for change." Around her, whispers started again as attendees began to process this unprecedented turn of events. An alien queen not only dancing openly, but also advocating for a shift in societal norms. The implications were staggering. Alex stepped closer now, his voice steady despite how much he was internally reeling. "She cares," Alex pointed out carefully. "Doesn't that matter?" He looked directly at Lysara, then, and held her gaze with all the quiet certainty of someone who understood what she'd risk just by being there tonight. Lysara's response to this was a gentle nod, more acceptance than agreement perhaps, but it resonated deeply within Alex nonetheless. She had found something rare here, genuine connection without barriers or titles getting in the way. Mithra's eyes darted between them both before settling back on Lysara once again, clearly conflicted despite his role as her protector and advisor for decades. "Very well," he finally conceded after a long pause filled with unspoken tensions. "But if this continues—" He left that threat hanging in the air heavily, enough to make its meaning clear even without words spoke. And aloud, Lysara inclined her head gracefully towards Mithros before turning her gaze back onto Alex, offering him something of an apologetic but grateful smile amidst all this turmoil. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for tonight." Alex nodded back at her solemnly, in understanding and respect for the situation they'd found themselves caught up within a moment, suspended between worlds and expectations that would inevitably shift as a result, even if no one knew quite how just yet. With those few brief exchanges, much had been communicated without ever needing to spell everything out explicitly, boundaries broken down not merely through dance, but by shared experience, respect earned across cultural divides where neither side could claim superiority simply because of differences in appearance or tradition. And amidst all this grandeur and conflict emerged something fragile yet powerful, a bond forged between two beings who understood each other uniquely well enough to stand up against the forces that threatened them both. And the air around them crackled with tension as Mithros, Queen Lysara's guard and advisor, stepped forward with a stern expression that left no room for uncertainty. "Your Majesty," he said firmly to Lysara, his eyes darting towards Alex momentarily before settling back onto her. "We must leave immediately." Lysara looked at him calmly, but her eyes held a depth of resolve that seemed out of place given the situation she was in. She had come here incognito, seeking nothing more than one night where she could be free from the weight of her crown and the expectations it carried with it. But now she stood there, caught between the man who'd brought joy back into her life and the responsibilities that demanded her return. Alex watched this exchange unfold with a mix of confusion and concern. The sudden shift in tone was jarring, and he could feel his own heart pounding as reality began to sink in. This woman wasn't just any stranger at an interspecies cultural event. She held power unimaginable by human standards. Yet despite everything that hung between them now, there remained something else, a connection forged through dance. Lysara's gaze flickered briefly towards Alex again, gratitude and a quiet resolve shining through her ethereal face. She had never expected to find such warmth in the company of someone outside her own realm, someone who saw beyond status and rank to appreciate the simple beauty of movement shared between two souls eager to learn from one another. But Mithros wasn't having any part of this unorthodox interaction playing out before them. "She was happy," he said to Alex, his tone a sharp reminder that their time together had consequences far greater than either could have anticipated when they first met on the dance floor. Mithros turned sharply towards Alex now, eyes narrowing in a way that suggested this human had just overstepped enormously despite his sincere tone. "Human," Mithros intoned icily before focusing once more on Lysara, who hadn't yet moved from her place beside him, but remained poised and unflinching. Lysara met the advisor's stern gaze, her violet eyes flickering with a myriad of emotions: defiance, fear, determination, and perhaps just a hint of hope. She had come here seeking normalcy. Now she faced an ultimatum that could strip away everything for which tonight's escapade stood: freedom. "Perhaps it's time my people learned to value joy," Lysara declared softly yet decisively, After another moment passed, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. For centuries, her species had focused solely on duty and order. Now was indeed the moment for change. The implications of such a statement were staggering, not just personally, but politically. Around her, whispers started again, as attendees began to process this unprecedented turn of events, an alien queen not only dancing openly, but also advocating for a shift in societal norms. It was like watching history being made before their eyes, a rare and precious moment that would echo through generations yet unborn. Alex stepped closer now, his voice steady despite how much he was internally reeling. "She cares," Alex pointed out carefully, knowing the weight of this revelation hit hard at what Lysara risked by simply being here tonight. He looked directly at her then, and held her gaze, with all the quiet certainty of someone who understood what she'd risked just by dancing with him. Lysara's response to this was a gentle nod, more acceptance than agreement perhaps, but it resonated deeply within Alex nonetheless. She had found something rare here, genuine connection without barriers or titles getting in the way. Her eyes met his again, and held them firmly for one long moment before she turned back towards Mithros. "Thank you," Lysara said quietly to him, her voice laced with gratitude despite their current disagreement over how far this path would lead them both further away from what they knew. Mithros' eyes darted between them both once more, before settling back on Lysara again. Clearly conflicted, how could he argue against the simple truth of happiness when it shone so brightly in her eyes? After a long pause filled with unspoken tensions, Mithros finally conceded, "But if this continues..." The threat hung heavy in the air, needing no further elaboration to be understood. Lysara inclined her head gracefully towards Mithros before turning her gaze back onto Alex once more, offering him something of an apologetic but grateful smile. Amidst all this turmoil, she extended a hand toward him. "One more dance?" she asked softly, challenging both the advisor's warning and centuries of royal etiquette in one graceful motion. Alex gaped for a moment at how bold and beautiful his gesture was before his lips curved into a grin that reached deep inside her heart with warmth rarely felt since she'd ascended to power. "Your Majesty's feet will still get stepped on," he chuckled lightly, acknowledging both their dance together and the absurdity of what they stood for against all odds. She laughed at a sound like silver bells ringing in defiance against shadows long cast over their species. Culturine said with a certainty that left no doubt about her choice, "I am counting on it." The crowd gasped collectively as this unspoken declaration played out before them. Here was an alien queen defying tradition, not only through movement, but by openly choosing joy, despite the high cost she'd pay for such indulgence. Around them, whispers grew into murmurs, then roars of approval mixed with disbelief. Here stood a beacon challenging long-held norms with nothing more than grace and determination wrapped in dance. It was as if history itself watched breathlessly while two beings forged a path forward towards understanding amidst chaos. Alex took her hand, gently respectful yet intimate, and together they began moving to the rhythm playing through speakers, weaving around other dancers who cheered them on openly now that their hesitation had faded into awe and support for such an extraordinary act of defiance. Mithros watched this with conflicted eyes. Could he argue against something so clearly right? Yet duty demanded caution, while Lysara's heart yearned to break free from the chains binding her existence. For once, though, it seemed she found strength in vulnerability rather than power through isolation or fear. As they danced again under lights reflecting off their skin and clothing a beautiful contrast of cultures blending seamlessly, There's something shifted within those watching too. Here stood not just two individuals defying odds, but a symbol for broader change waiting to emerge from shadows cast by millennia of rigid formality and unwavering duty. And amidst all this grandeur and conflict emerged something fragile yet powerful, a bond forged between two beings who understood each other uniquely well enough to stand up against the forces that threatened them both. Their dance wasn't just about moving together, it was about breaking down barriers, showing respect across cultural divides where neither side could claim superiority simply because of differences in appearance or tradition. And this moment encapsulates not only personal freedom, but societal transformation brewing beneath surface tensions and rigid structures long maintained through fear rather than love for one's fellow beings. It marks the beginning of new possibilities born from unexpected connections forged between hearts ready to reach beyond familiar confines towards something greater together. The final song of the night was a slow, sultry salsa tune that seemed to whisper secrets in their ears as they moved together. Alex and Queen Lysara Vorthanes had been dancing for hours, each step more fluid than the last, but it was this dance, a culmination of all their lessons, that felt different. It wasn't just about rhythm or technique, it was about connection. Lysara's silver skin shimmered in the dim light as she twirled gracefully into Alex's arms. He caught her easily, his warm eyes meeting hers with a soft smile that made her heart flutter despite herself. "You're doing great," he murmured, his voice rich and smooth like velvet against her ear. She smiled, feeling lighter than air, even though this was one of the most daring acts she had ever committed. "I am learning," she replied softly, her eyes glinting with laughter as they navigated around other dancers who watched them in awe. There were murmurs among the crowd, some wondering if an alien queen would step on Alex's toes again, but none dared to interrupt their dance. As the music crescendoed towards its climax, Lysara stumbled slightly, her forearms struggling momentarily with a complex move she had yet to master perfectly. But instead of stopping or correcting her mistake immediately, Alex simply held out his hand and guided her through the awkwardness, allowing them both to laugh at their clumsy attempt. When they finally found their rhythm again, there was a sense of accomplishment that filled Lysara's chest with warmth. She looked up into Alex's eyes, those dark pools holding an endless well of understanding and patience she had never before experienced, as her queenly duties demanded constant respect and formality from all around her. The song began to wind down, the last notes lingering like a sigh in the air between them. Lysara took one more step with him, their hands still entwined tightly despite the end of music. She could feel his fingers curling gently against hers, as if reluctant to release this moment that had brought her so much joy. She didn't let go either. Instead, she leaned in close and whispered, "Come to my palace." Alex raised an eyebrow, a playful twinkle dancing in his eyes despite the question forming on his lips about such an invitation from royalty. "Is that a royal command?" Lysara laughed softly, her violet eyes twinkling with genuine delight rather than haughty amusement she usually reserved for courtiers and nobles bowing before her throne. She shook her head slowly, letting go of Alex's hand only to place it back in the crook of his arm where he could hold on if needed, not because it was necessary, but out of habit born from millennia of custom. "It is a request," she said clearly, her voice soft yet firm with sincerity. "From Lysara." Alex squeezed her hand gently before bringing their clasped fingers to rest against the side of his neck, mirroring how he would have held on to her if this were any other dance in an empty room rather than a spectacle witnessed by many tonight. His eyes met hers again, and there was no hesitation or fear written across his features, just open-hearted acceptance. "Then, Lysara," Alex replied with quiet confidence that seemed to ground them both amidst the flurry of emotions swirling around them, "I would be honored." The crowd erupted into applause at this declaration, as much for its bravery as anything else. It wasn't often one saw an alien queen openly declaring herself on equal footing, without titles or demands attached. A shift so profound and unexpected it felt like history itself was being rewritten right before everyone's eyes. As Alex and Lysara walked off the dance floor together, leaving behind a trail of whispers and awestruck gazes following them out into the cool night air outside, where they could continue their conversation privately. The stars above seemed to wink down at them encouragingly. Even nature itself appeared to be tipping its hat towards change when such unlikely allies as these two were willing to stand side by side. Inside the grand hall of her palace later that evening, Lysara had officially appointed Alex Chen, human salsa instructor, as her personal dance tutor. It was a decision made not just out of admiration for his skill, but respect for what he represented, someone who could see past titles and duties into the heart of a person seeking connection through artistry. Each night after she finished handling state affairs, Lysara slipped away from her throne to join Alex in their private practice room. They continued perfecting every intricate step, each rotation filled with laughter more than frustration, as they both learned new ways to express themselves outside rigid formality and protocol-driven motions. The palace staff whispered about the strange occurrence as their queen, laughing openly without reason or cause, having moments of genuine joy where previously there had only been duty. Some were confused by these changes, while others felt hope stirring within them that perhaps their world was moving towards something better, freer than what they'd known under centuries-old customs. One such night, after an especially challenging dance lesson left both sweating and breathless, but smiling in accomplishment, Alex leaned back against a wall, watching Lysara stretch out gracefully before him. He sighed softly as he observed her movements, no longer constrained by formalities or fear, but driven purely by desire for expression through artistry. Lying down on the mat to cool off slightly himself, he glanced up at her, still stretching, and asked curiously, "Why weren't you intimidated when I learned who you were?" Her violet eyes locked onto his dark ones as she paused mid-stretch before finishing with a small laugh. Moving over to sit beside him instead of retreating further into formal postures demanded by protocol elsewhere in the palace, Lysara replied thoughtfully, "You remained kind and respectful despite knowing my position," she explained simply. "There was no change from how you treated me, as just another student who wanted to learn." Alex nodded slowly, understanding dawning across his features, along with a soft smile that reached down into their bond forged through shared moments of laughter and struggle alike. He squeezed her hand, resting beside him gently. "You were still the same woman," he said softly but firmly, "who stepped on my feet once too often." Lysara's eyes softened immeasurably at those words spoken with such sincere affection she hadn't realized could exist beyond formalities and royal duties until now. Leaning in close towards him finally, after all these weeks spent learning to bridge worlds between their cultures, Lysara kissed Alex tenderly on the lips. It was soft but meaningful, a kiss imbued not only with love born from shared experiences, but also acknowledgement that a title or crown cannot change what lies beneath. Her Majesty remained Queen Vorthinis, ruling over vast star systems, yet here in this moment, she chose to be Lysara, woman who fell in love through dance and laughter with someone special enough for her heart. She pulled back gently, still holding on to Alec's gaze, even as their breaths mingled together again. "A crown," she murmured softly against his lips before pulling away completely, yet smiling warmly up at him, "does not change that." Alec smiled back down at Lysara, squeezing her hand affectionately once more before standing up to offer a hand out for the woman who would be both queen and beloved dance partner from now on. The stars above twinkled, as if agreeing wholeheartedly with their decision, a silent nod towards the new path they had chosen together. And so began not just another chapter, but an entire journey of transformation, blending grace and formality into something greater than either could ever achieve alone through the simple act of dancing side by side under starlit skies.